When I found my first will online, I was very excited. It told me so much about my ancestors. And next on Evidentia Answers, I'm going to show you how to use Evidentia to enter that data. Hello and happy holidays. My name is Ed Thompson, and I want to welcome you to the last Evidentia Answers of 2020. I've had a great time doing these and plan on continuing to do them starting up again in January. And it's been wonderful getting a chance to interface with you all. Today what I want to talk about is wills. I found by browsing the Family Search Records database the will of my fifth great-grandmother. Now, my fifth great-grandfather, her husband, is my brick wall. So I'm more than glad to get any information I can about that generation. And the fact that she mentioned her children in the will and kind of mapped them out in order it was huge for me. So without further ado, let's pull up Evidentia and see what we have. Now, give me 1 second here to improve this display. Nope, I got it right. Okay. Let me get the window in properly then. There we go. Okay, so there's nothing special about this is a probate record that I got from Family Search, where it was in the probate records. This is a will. There's different kinds of probate records, a lot of them listing out kind of the various legal steps that were followed to close out the estate. This was actually a transcription of Rachel Brown's will, which I believe, and you'll see why in a moment, her son helped her with. So if we look first at the citation, you don't see anything fancy about it. It's a database collection in Family Search. And let's see, did I freeform this or did I? No, yeah, I used freeform citation format at the time that I entered this, so I did not use one of the templates. There is one available, I believe. Let's see, let's show that. Is there anything specific for probate? Online property and probate. So there is a template that could be used, but I just went freeform and may have even copied this. The citations on Family Search for their records are actually pretty good. So I may have just copied their citation verbatim into my document. But where the real interesting work comes is in finding my mouse, is in the step of cataloging information. And you'll see here that I have a ton of information here that I was able to extract from the will. Now, let's go ahead and look at my transcription of the will, which I have right here. The will was handwritten and it was very difficult to read, so I had to take some time to transcribe it, not just for your sakes, but so that I could share it with another descendant of Rachel, who I work with in trying to break down this brick wall. But if we look at the will, it's a text document. And so what I'm going to do is I've highlighted the pieces of information that I thought were relevant, and I'll speak to a couple of the other pieces of information that are questionable whether they're relevant or not. And then I will show you how that information was entered into the catalog claim screen on Evidentia. Now, You'll see some spelling errors. I got whiff instead of wife down here. But that is how it appeared in the document. So in the transcription, you try and get it as close to what it actually says in the document as possible. So let's start in the beginning. In the name of God, amen. I, Rachel Thompson of Guilford in the county of Belknap and the state of New Hampshire, being of sound and perfect memory, blessed by Almighty God for the same, do make and publish this my last will and testament in the manner and form following. And then there was some unintelligible stuff that I couldn't make out after that. I think it was legalese. So the first thing I notice is right off the bat, I get Rachel Thompson of Guilford in the county of Belknap and the state of New Hampshire. So if the comment I left myself is, hey, there's a residence claim. And if I combine that residence information with what's at the bottom, that in witness thereof I hereunto set my signature the 7th of October 1846, then I can make a legitimate claim that she lived in Guilford in Belknap County in the state of New Hampshire on that date. So that's the first information I can glean from that particular document. First, I give and bequeath unto my eldest daughter, Hannah Edwards, wife of Samuel Edwards, 1 string of gold pearls, 1 purple silk dress, and 1 cashmere shawl. So I did not know about Hannah until I read this document. So this was huge for me. And there are actually multiple pieces of valuable information that that I can glean from this. Number one, that Hannah Thompson, that would be her maiden name, is the child of Rachel Brown. And remember, in Evidentia, the child-parent relationship is always initiated from the side of the child. The child is, or I am a child of, and then I list the parent. It will display in the correct order. If I bring up the parent, it'll say so-and-so is a parent of the child. But in terms of entering that data, we always go from the child to the parent. So that's one piece of information I'm able to glean from here. I'm also able to glean the spouse, that her spouse was Samuel Edwards. And that gave me a direction to go if I want to research her further. And I was able to get considerable information about her and marriage information, etc., once I know where to look. Now, the last thing in this paragraph is what she was bequeathed. She was bequeathed 1 string of gold pearls, 1 purple silk dress, and 1 cashmere shawl. Now, does that have any value in my genealogy research? And if you post in the chat, I'd be interested in your comments on that. But I'm looking at this, and I could legitimately list this under a claim type of property, for example, or I could create a new claim type. For the most part, for me, this is good. What's the word I want? Flavor, context. It gives life to Hannah if I was writing a narrative. But in terms of being able to research the things that I care about, birth, death, residence, contribution to society, etc., there's not much there for me. So I would probably skip this. And I say that, and when we look at the document or how I cataloged it, I probably did exactly the opposite. Next, we have Susanna, who I did know about. And I will give and bequeath unto my daughter Susanna Smith, wife of Ebenezer Smith, late of Guilford, deceased, 1/3 of my household furniture and 1/3 of my wearing apparel, not disposed of as above. So basically 1/3 of everything except the purple dress and the cashmere shawl she gave to Hannah. Now, what do I glean from that? Let's start with that. Well, again, I have a child of reference, that Susanna was the child of Rachel. And I also have a spousal reference that I want to capture, and that would be Ebenezer Smith. And I have some death information. Yeah, my comments is 2 seconds. I know that as of this date, Ebenezer Smith was no longer with us. And so I could capture that as part of a death claim for Ebenezer Smith. Now, the interesting thing here I find is that while Hannah received particular items from the estate, Susanna seemed to receive more, in terms of 1/3 of basically everything that was remaining, and raises an interesting question that I'll come back to once I go through the rest of the list. So to my eldest son Jacob, the sum of $10. So here I have that Jacob was the eldest son. So again, a child of reference. Now, one of the things in the back of my mind is that when she says that Jacob was her eldest son, does she mean her eldest born son, or does she mean her eldest living son? And could she indeed have had a previous son to this that she doesn't refer to as her eldest son, since he's not being bequeathed anything? So I have to be careful here about how much I attribute this, that Jacob was indeed the firstborn son, but still, I'm getting some valuable birth order information here. I also give him bequeath unto my son David Thompson, and since her husband was David Thompson, that's interesting, she has a David, the sum of $10. I give and bequeath unto my son Elijah, another son I did not know about, the sum of $10. My son Daniel Thompson, the sum of $10. Now Daniel at this time was living in Woburn, and he is my direct ancestor. So if Rachel is my 5th great-grandmother, Daniel is my 4th great-grandfather. And then I give and bequeath unto my son Jonathan 1/3 of my household furniture and 1/3 part of my said wearing apparel. I suppose for some potential future wife. Now, once again, the others got, $10 a piece, and I did look up. It was, worth probably, more than $100 or close to $100 if we go back at that time. But Jonathan is getting 1/3 of the furniture and 1/3 of the wearing apparel. So let's come back to that. So now I've given out, or she's given out, 2/3 of her household furniture and wearing apparel, having given some of the more valuable stuff to her eldest daughter, Hannah. So all of these are child of claims. We go down, and this is one that's very telling. And lastly, as to all the rest, residence and remainder of my personal estate, household furniture and wearing apparel, the third, whatsoever after payment of my unintelligible debts, and something else I could not make out above named, I give and bequeath unto my son Levi B. Thompson, whom I hereby appoint my sole executor. Now, when I prepped for this, I was all ready to create a mystery here, because I had totally missed that she said the residence. So Levi got the house, or the main portion of the property. So in terms of claims, I'm going to have a property claim. Probably will have a property claim in this case, because I want to follow at some point the trail of this property being passed down. One of the mysteries that I have for this is that David, the father, all of a sudden shows up in Guilford, and that is not where he or Rachel are from. He and Rachel were from much further southeast in New Hampshire, that at one time was actually a portion of Massachusetts. And the question I've always had in the back of my mind was, okay, so why Guilford? Why that particular area? And so that's one of the mysteries that I'm trying to solve, is where do you get the land from? Unlike some other states, New Hampshire didn't give land grants to Revolutionary War veterans. So I don't have an easy answer for where he got the land and why he chose that particular land. But knowing that the residence has been bequeathed to Levi, and Levi has left a much larger stamp on that community, I know from other peripheral research, this gives me a place to start looking for property records. And indeed, when I look for property records in that area, I can see a land sale by Levi, who was a doctor and already had a residence. And no, I'm sorry, his son was a doctor. He was the postmaster for that area, so probably had his own residence. And this was not. These people were not rich. I suspect that they were borderline ready to lose the property after the death of the father 10 years earlier. And indeed, I can find evidence that at this time, the mother, Rachel, who is the main character in this information, ended up living with Levi. So if that hasn't already happened in the time frame, then it is going to very soon. So for Levi, I would want to create a property claim. I would also want to add a child of claim, that he was a child of Rachel. And I guess that he was a witness or executor. A lot of times with these kinds of records, I will definitely capture the witnesses and the executors, because this starts out a fan base, friends, associates, and neighbors, and can be very telling in terms of identifying some other relationships and the relationship of my ancestor with the community. So I will almost always capture the name of the executor of the will and the name of any witnesses who witnessed the signing of the will. Now, in this particular case, I know exactly who Levi is from all the other evidence, so it's not critical that I capture that in this case, but I probably did it out of consistency, and that's why I'm thinking about either labeling him a witness, which is a category I don't think that exists yet. I would add it, or just stick him in fan. Although fan seems kind of odd since he's actually a family member and not a friend, associate, or neighbor. And then the last thing I come down to is in witness of which I have hereunto set my something seal and seal. I wasn't sure what that was. I couldn't make that part out. This 7th day of October, 1846. And I noted before that this gives me a date of when the document was signed, so I know that at this point in time where Rachel lived from the information I got from the top of the document. And then finally, Rachel, and then there's an indication that she left a mark, Thompson. Now, what does that tell me? Well, that says something about her education in terms of, that's a hint basically that Rachel was illiterate. And there is at least you can write her name. I have corresponding evidence that the same can be said for her husband, at least in his younger years. So I like to capture that kind of information because I like to understand the educational rise of my ancestors. At what point did they become more educated? Did they contribute at a higher level of society or a lower level of society? Because that gives the narrative flavor. And then I missed this whole part here down here. Signed, sealed, published, and delivered by the above named Rachel Thompson. As for last will, in the presence of us who, presence of each other, have described our names. So these are the witnesses, and I would capture them in the fan as a fan claim to be used in any kind of friends, associates, and neighbors research. And then I have an address for the court. I have the judge of the court and other information here that I would want to capture. And then the registrar, the name of the registrar. Quick look over at comments. The property is important if it has been passed through the family to someone. That is absolutely true. That's true. If I wanted to know the provenance of that gold necklace or that cashmere sweater, that would be very valuable information to capture. Deborah, does the existence of valuables increase the likelihood of the family being found in certain tax, business, or social records. Certainly there'd be a hint of it, that they, so yeah, how would I categorize that as a claim? I probably would stick that under property then and get creative about how I analyze property evidence or what research question I would assign that to. Or I would create a new claim type. Well, first it would be a clue to look in the tax records. Maybe I'd create a new claim type about social standing. It depends on what research question I wanted to answer. But I'm not going to be limited by the claim types that Evidentia comes with. I'm going to get creative here and create a new claim type to capture this kind of peripheral information about the property that was given to that first daughter. Now, before we move on, I want to come back to the issue of the thirds. And because I found it interesting, she's not evenly distributing the property to all of her children. And I thought about this. Let's look at the ones she gave a third to. She gave a third to Hannah Edwards. And I knew that Hannah lived in the general area with her husband Samuel of Guilford. She gave a third to Susanna Smith. And I could say the same thing there, and that she's providing, actually Hannah was the special property. The first third was given to Susanna Smith. She was the one who living in the area, and she no longer had a husband to support her. She was a widow. So that was probably some of the thought process there. But let's be clear, in terms of clear evidence, I'm speculating. So these are clues, not facts. If I come down here, what do I know about Levi and Jonathan, the two sons who each received a third? I know from looking at other records that they lived in the area. So she gave her furniture to 3 of her children who lived in proximity to where she lived. So if I look at the brothers, Jacob, I know Jacob did not live in the proximity. He lived back where his father originally came from. I don't know anything about David. I don't know anything about Elijah. I know that Daniel did not live in proximity. He lived in Massachusetts, the center of the state. So based on that, it provides a clue that maybe I need to look for David and Elijah somewhere else. If that's the reason, if my theory is correct, that that's the reason they did not receive an equitable portion of the estate. And it could very well be that the 3 that were local, well, it could be favoritism. It could be that they were the ones who had been taking care of. Let's see, the father died in 1842. This was in 1846. So it very well may be that these are the children that were taking care of Rachel in her old age for the last 4 years. And she was to last for 6 more years. She died 10 years after the death of her husband. Okay, so let's go back to Evidentia and look at look at how I worded this stuff. Okay, on April 20th, 1852, the will of Rachel Brown Thompson was executed by Warren Lovell, Judge of Probate, and registered by O. Vaughn. So I know from this, now where did I get this information? This date all of a sudden pops up. Well, that was in that lower section that I had not screened before this session. I didn't scroll down to capture that when I was reviewing the document with you. But I know that the will was executed on that date, and so I know that she was gone by that date. So I created a death claim and a probate claim. Now, what am I going to do with a probate claim as a category in and of itself? I don't know, but I like having it. On the 4th day of October, 1846, the day of the signing, Rachel Brown Thompson bequeathed goods to her son Levi B. Thompson and appointed him executor. So what have I captured here? I've captured that Levi B. is the child of Rachel Brown, and I guess I chose not to add information about the fact that he was executor because he was a family member. But I could. Let me get this over to the right place. On the 4th day of October, 1846, Rachel Brown bequeathed $10 to her son Daniel, again, child of, $10 to her eldest son Elijah, child of, bequeathed $10 to her son David, and $10 to her eldest son Jacob. Did I do that one twice? I have eldest son Elijah, and that is not what the document said. So let me remove that. See, that could have created a problem with my research. Always good to double check. Then we get down to on the 4th, let's see, 4th day, bequeathed goods to her eldest daughter, Hannah Edwards, wife of Samuel Edwards. So here I get that Anna was a child of Rachel, and I'm actually missing that she was the spouse of Samuel Edwards. So let's add this. Am I not getting? Yes, I didn't wait for it to. I'm going to put Hannah. Well, I'm going to put Edwards, comma, Samuel. And the reason I do it that way is I know he's not in the database yet, and that's the way I want to list him. And Hannah. Oh, I don't have Hannah in this database yet. So Thompson, comma, Hannah. And if you were here last week, or when I talked about claim types, remember when you're adding new people, you want to hit enter. And can I? No. Okay. So I'm going to add the tag, and now I've got the spousal relationship that I had missed out on the first time. Let's see, Hannah, that was that property. On the 4th day of October, 1846, Rachel Brown, oh, I know what's wrong. The screen's too small. I had to sacrifice screen real estate for making sure that you could see everything, that it was large enough. So Hannah, on the 4th day of October, blah, blah, blah. Rachel Brown lived in Guilford, Belknap County, New Hampshire. So what am I missing? I am missing... okay, so I glossed over Susanna, wife of Ebenezer, and Hannah I got... I didn't do a spousal thing for... I didn't do a spousal for Susanna, nor did I do a death for Ebenezer. So I do need to come back and do that. I won't make you watch me do this. And then the other thing that I didn't do, and I will do this later, I'm going to update the claim type for Levi that he got the residence and goods. And I'm going to add another claim type here because remember I want to research this property later. I keep say you saw me go for the done. Actually, I think if I do done, as long as this person has got a tag, in other words, he's got a circle, I think by default, oh no, it'll warn me. You have unsaved changes, close without saving. No, I don't want to do that. So I hit the add tags. Now it's down here. Boom. I've got the property of. So later when I go and pull up a summary report, that would alert me to the fact that there's some property claims for Levi. And then that would, I put it in a research log somewhere that I want to research the property records of Guilford to find out what he did with that property, because I may be able to find out things like exactly what the plat is, where the property was, and who he sold it to. May indicate some relationships there. What I really want to find out is where David got it from, and I will kind of see if I get that information from my property of Levi B. Thompson research. Okay, so that is all for how I entered will information into Evidentia and the type of research that I'm able to support with it. Now, I entitled it Probate Records, and I realized as this meeting started, or actually I realized about 10 minutes before the meeting, that there's other kinds of probate records. That what I had here was just the written will. The one thing that made this a little bit more than just the written will was this section down here about when it was executed and by whom. Was there a date on that? Yeah. This is where I got that other date. So we knew she had passed by that date. So there are other types of probate records that I would handle differently. And in a future episode of Evidentia Answers, I'll try to bring up a different kind of record. But hopefully you find this helpful and give you an idea of the kind of thought process that goes into entering any kind of claim type in Evidentia and really looking at the record to get information that may not be the main purpose of the record after all. Huge value in that. So this is it for 2020. On Thursday, for those of you who attend, will be the last episode of Genealogy Software Showcase. And that episode is going to focus on the different kinds of charts the tree building programs can provide. And we'll also take a second look at the charting companion to see why you might want to add that to your library of tools. So that's Thursday night at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. But until then, and if you're not coming back, I wish you all a happy holiday, and we'll see you in 2021.